Thank you for joining us for 10 Minutes with the Artist, an episodic series that explores the art practice and the personal vision that guides artists. On today's episode, we're very proud to have Hue Chee Vang, who is completing his thesis in architecture at North Dakota State University. We invited him here today to speak about his research as well as the creation of artifacts in preparation for his defense. Hue Chee's work examines ritual as a way to reconcile a dueling demand for our attention, our understanding, our most intimate perceptions. Through preset actions and expectations, do we get closer to more sacred connections? Can a ritual make us overlap with a mystery and make it a part of us, and us a part of it? We'll be discussing this and much more. I'm Anthony Ferris, and this is 10 Minutes with the Artist. So thank you so very much, Hue Chee, for coming and speaking with us on 10 Minutes with the Artist. So I would call your work a ritual. Okay. And so I'm kind of curious, my first question is, can you create a ritual?
I think through architecture, you actually can because, in a sense, the architect kind of designs the movement throughout the space, you know? So, in a sense, it's actually a ritual to move through the architecture that's been designed for you. It's kind of like, you know, you go into a celebration and everything is kind of put out for you and you have to do it in a specific way. But then, in a sense, it's nice because architecture really, it doesn't require having too much of control. And it allows open space for rituals or non-rituals. And for me, my design will probably be more about rituals.
Okay.
And actually kind of moving through the spaces.
Well, like speaking sort of about your artifact, you've created sort of a ritual there, right? Sort of like you would with architecture in a way. Can you talk a little bit about?
Of course. My artifact, I really wanted to kind of bring in the presence of the distant into what is close. If you look at it, you can see that some of the light in the front kind of plays around with the light in the back, and these two kind of create a tension between one another, between the veil. And well, my thesis is based on kind of funerals and death, in a sense. You know, death is kind of something that we really don't understand sometimes, and so this tension between death and life is what creates that intimacy between people. And I mean, that's what my artifact is all about, I guess.
So one thing that you notice when you're looking at the work is that the lights are off, right?
Yep.
So you have, you've gotten rid of all ambient light. And why is that important in the piece?
Well, for me, I really want to kind of play around with these opposites. So when I turn off the lights, it's kind of saying that, you know, what is actually really creating the light? Is it really the darkness that's creating the light, or is it really the candles that are creating the light? Because without the darkness, I mean, there would be no light. You know, it would just be all light. So in a sense, it's kind of enhancing one of the other by kind of, what would you say, exaggerating the other. So.
Okay. And there's a sort of an expectation that you have in creating this ritual that's very specific. So people are expected to move a certain way and then go toward, like sort of follow a path from right to left. Can you talk about your decision to make that direction a vital part of this ritual? And would it be different if people were moving from left to right? Or
most of my research has been done on like sacred spaces, and the research I've done is kind of on buildings that are precedents and like kind of temples and pyramids and such, and churches, and it's all about orientation. So when I kind of come from the right, it's kind of, every time we're kind of orientating ourselves, we always orientate ourselves north. So you can always say that what is in front of you is north, like, and so when you come from the right, you're actually coming from the east. So it's like this rising sun, and you exit into the sunset, and that's what I was trying to play with the artifact. It was kind of this orientation, even though maybe in the building it didn't seem like, you know, we were orientated the right way. It's the artifact that was kind of orientated in the north, east, west way.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about some of the rituals that you've seen or read about that sort of follow that sort of?
Of course, the church, the it's actually always, the head of the church is always faced towards the east. So when you kind of rise, when the sun rises, it rises on the head of the church, and when it sets on the exit or the entry of the church. And then there's also rituals where in funerals where they're very specific about how you place the body. In my rituals, or in my culture, we always place the head to the east, because we say that, you know, we don't want to put it to the west, because if you put it to the west, you're actually blinding the person. That's actually going into this journey of reincarnation. So it's these little small things that kind of play into the artifact.
It almost seems like in some ways and I'm speaking about we in American culture, have lost our sort of like sense of direction.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these sort of metaphors that play such a powerful role in ritual have sort of been, they haven't been discarded because they're still being enacted, but they're unknown. They're sort of like they're latent.
Yep.
So I don't know if there's a question there. I just think that's a really interesting...
Yeah. I actually addressed it in my project where, in a sense, we find so much interest in what is outside of us, like what is external, you know, the universe and kind of the people around us and in our environment, that we kind of forget the internal self, which is kind of the conscious mind. And I think that is what is actually really spiritual. It's the spirit of the being. And my project is to kind of bring you into yourself instead of kind of being so worried about everything around you, but really these little small things that really matter to you the most. And I think when death comes into play, it's like, it's really about the person who's passed away, but at the same time, it's really about you and what's this event has created for yourself. And it's all about being transcendental in this movement, this transition of life. Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting that something that may have been so obvious and factual to start off with has become sort of a mystery to us, and therefore it becomes sacred and spiritual in a way, you know, just like the most basic thing. So I hear you talk about life and death as sort of like a duality, you know, each sort of relying on each other. So, so is this ritual for the living or for the dead?
I think it's for both, in my opinion, because you can't say that life can be with death and death can be with life. But in a sense, in my research, in my point of view, it's saying that, you know, even though people are dead, they're actually still with us, you know. And that's what's so special about this duality, is because that, you know, death is we see death as something that is actually non-existent. Like, why would you do this for someone who's dead? Why would you do this for someone who doesn't exist anymore? But then for other cultures, you know, death is actually something that's just a next step to the next life or to the next world. And they're actually still existing inside of us or inside somewhere around us. So.
Okay. Sort of at the end of the conversation, we'd like to have a little discussion about sort of your creative process. So I'm kind of curious what time of day you feel most creative.
Well, I'm a nocturnal person, so I usually work at night.
Okay.
Yeah, I usually work around 2 a.m. to like probably 6. And that's when I'm like the most creative, even though I'm like exhausted about it. I'm like, okay, I'm tired, so I got to do this. And it just go ham.
Okay.
It's pretty fun.
Do you listen to music or anything like that while you're creating?
Sometimes I do, because I just feel like I need to be alone, but then most of the time I want to kind of take my headphones off and just let me be silent and listen to everybody around me, because that kind of inspires me. They're like kind of talking about their projects, and I'm like, okay, that could work for mine too. So, you know, you kind of get inspiration from your colleagues that are always working around you. So yeah, it's fun.
Is there anything that you're reading right now?
Well, what I'm reading right now is actually The Skin of the Dirt. It's kind of this book about how the dirt is this thing that's so special to us, and we kind of think it's nothing. But then in the book, he talks about a lot of things about how dirt becomes this space for the dead, and it's actually cradle. You know, we're created from the earth, and at the end of the day, we're put back into the earth. And it's so. And then he also talks about kind of plants and how the plants can kind of create this new world for us in a way that we never could ever think of. And I think it's related to my project because, you know, that book, it talks about everything so poetically. And that's what I want to talk about on my project. So I kind of bring in his language into my own project. Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess my last question would be, what's next for you?
Well, I hope I can get a job in Minneapolis right after thesis, right after school, and then just start working from there. I really hope that I can get my architecture licensure in probably like 3 years. But you never know, so
Okay.
whatever comes my way.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for your time, and I'd also like to thank you all for your time and your interest in the professional practice and the creative endeavors happening here at North Dakota State University. So thank you very much, and for everyone here at the Memorial Union Gallery, keep creative.